Imagine you're told that a single tiny drop of blood, pricked painlessly from your fingertip, can be tested for hundreds of diseases: cancer, diabetes, HIV, cholesterol, all from one drop, cheaper and faster than any lab in the country, with results in hours instead of days. Now imagine that promise was a lie, that the machine supposedly running those tests barely worked at all, and that real people, pregnant women, cancer patients, people terrified about HIV, were receiving results that were completely, dangerously wrong and making life-altering decisions based on them. This isn't a hypothetical. It's the documented story of a company called Theranos, a company once valued at $9 billion, backed by some of the most powerful people in the world, that turned out to be one of the largest medical frauds in modern history. And everything you're about to hear is drawn strictly from the public court record, federal findings, and sworn testimony. This is Dark Diagnosis Files, and this is the story of Theranos. Theranos was founded in 2003 by a 19-year-old Stanford dropout named Elizabeth Holmes. Her pitch was genuinely revolutionary and genuinely appealing. Traditional blood testing requires vials of blood drawn from your arm with a needle, sent to a lab, processed over days. It's uncomfortable, it's slow, and for people who fear needles or need frequent testing, it's a real barrier to care. Holmes often framed her mission in deeply personal, emotional terms. She spoke publicly about a fear of needles and about the idea that no one should have to say goodbye to a loved one too soon because a disease was caught too late. It was a compelling story, a young founder who wasn't just building a product, but trying to save lives and spare families grief. That narrative was a large part of what made people, from investors to journalists to patients, want so badly to believe in her. Holmes claimed Theranos had solved all of that. Their technology, she said, could run a huge menu of tests, eventually claimed to be hundreds of different diagnostic tests, using just a few drops of blood from a simple finger prick. The blood would be collected in a tiny container the company called a nanotainer, and analyzed by a compact proprietary machine the company named the Edison. If it worked, it would have transformed medicine. Cheaper testing, painless testing, testing accessible to millions of people who avoided it. It was the kind of vision that changes the world. There was just one problem. It didn't work. The money and the prestige came first, long before anyone outside the company questioned the technology. Theranos raised more than $700 million from investors. At its peak, around 2013 and 2014, it was valued at roughly $9 billion, and Elizabeth Holmes, young, articulate, famous for her black turtlenecks modeled on Steve Jobs, was celebrated as the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world. She graced the covers of major magazines. She was invited to speak at prestigious events, and she assembled a board of directors packed with extraordinarily powerful, credible names: former US Secretaries of State, former Secretaries of Defense, and other national figures. Their presence lent the company an aura of unquestionable legitimacy. If these people believed in Theranos, who would think to doubt it? This is worth dwelling on, because it's part of why the fraud went undetected for so long. The board was stacked with statesmen and military leaders, genuinely impressive, genuinely trustworthy public figures. But notably, it was thin on the kind of people who could actually evaluate the core claim: scientists, doctors, and laboratory experts who understood blood chemistry and diagnostics. The prestige was real. The scientific scrutiny, from within, was not. Investors saw the famous names and assumed someone qualified must have checked the science. In many cases, no one truly had. Some major investors later admitted they never saw independent validation of the technology before committing enormous sums, swept up, like everyone else, in the sheer momentum of the story. But according to the federal case later brought against the company's leadership, that legitimacy was masking a fundamental deception. Because behind the scenes, the Edison device could not reliably do what the company claimed. Here is what federal prosecutors documented. The Theranos machine was plagued with problems. It produced inaccurate and inconsistent results. It could only handle a small fraction of the tests the company advertised. And so, to keep up the appearance that their technology worked, the company did something the indictment lays out plainly. They secretly used commercially available blood testing machines, built by other established companies like Siemens, to run many of the tests. Former employees later described the reality inside the lab as chaotic and, at times, alarming. The Edison devices would frequently fail quality control checks. The internal tests are lab runs to confirm a machine is producing trustworthy numbers. According to accounts that emerged in reporting and testimony, Results that failed these checks were sometimes discarded until a passing result appeared, a practice that fundamentally undermines the entire point of quality control. Employees who raised concerns about accuracy described a culture of intense secrecy, where questioning the technology could put your job at risk, and where different parts of the company were deliberately kept from seeing what the others were doing. Think about what the secret use of competitors' machines means. Patients believed their blood was being analyzed by Theranos' revolutionary breakthrough technology. In reality, for many tests, it was being run on ordinary machines the company had bought from competitors, machines that were never designed to work with the tiny finger prick samples Theranos was collecting. To use those tiny samples on standard equipment, the blood sometimes had to be diluted, which could further distort the results, pushing them outside the range the machines were built to measure accurately. The federal indictment stated it directly. The defendants knew Theranos was not capable of consistently producing accurate and reliable results for certain blood tests, and named specific tests among them, including tests for conditions as serious as HIV. And this is where the story stops being about business fraud and becomes something this channel exists to examine: the direct human harm to real patients. By 2013, Theranos had partnered with a major pharmacy chain and begun offering its blood tests directly to the public in retail locations. Thousands of ordinary people, trusting that they were getting a legitimate, even superior medical test, put their health in the hands of a technology that federal prosecutors would later say the company knew was unreliable. The consequences, laid out in court, were devastating for some of them. According to the US Department of Justice, Theranos sent out inaccurate results to patients being screened for cancer. It sent inaccurate results to women monitoring their pregnancies. And in one documented example cited by the government, a patient was led to believe she had the precursor virus to AIDS, based on a result that was wrong. At trial, patients testified in person about what these false results did to their lives. One woman testified that a Theranos blood test told her she was miscarrying, when in fact she had a healthy pregnancy. Believing the false result, she changed the medication she was taking, a change that could have harmed her developing baby. She eventually gave birth to a healthy child, but only after being put through a terror that never should have happened. Another patient testified that she received a false positive result indicating she had HIV antibodies after taking a Theranos test at a pharmacy. Imagine receiving that news, believing, even for a period of time, that you carried a life-defining, life-threatening virus because of a machine that didn't work. Another patient learned that a Theranos test had shown his blood was taking dangerously long to clot, prompting his doctor to change his medication, before the result was later corrected. These were not abstract statistics. These were real people, making real medical decisions, based on results the company had reason to know it could not stand behind. And for every dramatic example that reached a courtroom, there were countless quieter ones. Later that year, she was sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison. Ramesh Balwani was tried separately and convicted on all 12 fraud counts against him, receiving an even longer sentence. Those are the documented facts of the court record, the verdicts, the convictions, the sentences, exactly as they were handed down. Think about what that means in practice. Somewhere out there were people who had been reassured they were healthy when a proper test might have caught something, and others who had been needlessly frightened by numbers that were simply wrong. A blood test isn't an abstract number on a page. It's the basis on which a doctor decides whether to treat you, medicate you, operate on you, or send you home. Corrupt that number, and you corrupt every decision that flows from it. The full extent of the harm to that silent majority of patients may never be completely known. So how did the truth finally come out? It came out because of people willing to speak up, and a journalist willing to listen. Inside the company, some employees grew deeply alarmed by what they were seeing: the failing tests, the gap between the public claims and the private reality. Several became whistleblowers, taking an enormous personal risk to raise the alarm. Among them was a young employee named Tyler Schultz, notably the grandson of one of Theranos' own board members, a former US Secretary of State. Tyler had joined the company as a believer, excited to be part of something revolutionary. But when he saw how the tests were actually performing and how results seemed to be manipulated to look better than they were, he raised concerns internally. When those concerns were dismissed, he faced enormous pressure, including, by his account, from within his own family, given his grandfather's loyalty to the company and its founder. He described being followed and threatened with legal action. Choosing the truth cost him personally, and he chose it anyway. Another former employee, Erica Chung, took similar risks, ultimately helping alert regulators to what was happening inside the lab. One of these insiders connected with an investigative reporter at the Wall Street Journal named John Carreyrou. In 2015, after months of careful investigation, Carreyrou published a bombshell report questioning whether Theranos' technology actually worked and revealing that the company was relying on conventional machines for many of its tests. Theranos fought back hard. According to accounts of the period, the company threatened legal action and pressured sources, deploying high-powered attorneys to try to kill the story before it ran. But the reporting held. Once the first crack appeared, regulators and investigators moved in. A federal health regulator inspected the company's lab and concluded that Theranos' practices posed a genuine risk to patient health. After that, the collapse was swift. The pharmacy partnership ended. Regulators sanctioned the company. Theranos was forced to void or correct a staggering number of test results it had already sent to patients, by some accounts, ultimately concluding that a patient impact existed for essentially every test run on its own analyzers. In 2018, federal prosecutors indicted Elizabeth Holmes and the company's former president, Ramesh Balwani, on multiple counts of fraud. The government alleged two schemes, one to defraud investors out of hundreds of millions of dollars, and a second to defraud the doctors and patients who relied on the tests. Theranos, once valued at $9 billion, formally dissolved that same year. The trials brought the story to its documented conclusion. In January 2022, a federal jury convicted Elizabeth Holmes on 4 counts related to defrauding investors, 1 count of conspiracy, and 3 counts of wire fraud. The jury's verdict was specific and worth stating accurately. She was convicted on the investor fraud counts, while being acquitted of the charges related to defrauding patients, and the jury could not reach a verdict on some other counts. Later that year, she was sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison. Ramesh Balwani was tried separately and convicted on all 12 fraud counts against him, receiving an even longer sentence. Those are the documented facts of the court record, the verdicts, the convictions, the sentences, exactly as they were handed down. But for a channel about medical horror, the most important part of the Theranos story isn't the courtroom drama or the spectacular fall of a Silicon Valley star. It's the quieter horror underneath it. It's the pregnant woman staring at a result telling her she was losing her baby. It's the person reading that they might have HIV. It's the cancer patient, already frightened, handed numbers that meant nothing because the machine that produced them didn't work. When you strip away the billions of dollars and the famous board members and the magazine covers, what's left is the most basic betrayal in all of medicine. People trusted a test with their health, and that trust was placed in something that could not deliver the truth. We trust medical results in a way we trust almost nothing else. When a test tells us something about our own body, we believe it, and we act on it. The Theranos case is a chilling reminder that this trust is only ever as good as the honesty of the people and the machines behind it. If documented cases like this one matter to you, please take a moment to subscribe to Dark Diagnosis Files. We investigate the real, recorded failures of medicine, the frauds, the mysteries, the disasters, and the reforms that follow, always grounded in the public record and told with the seriousness they deserve. Your subscription is what keeps this channel going. This is a real case, based entirely on the public court record and federal findings. Every detail is sourced from confirmed court documents, federal indictments, and published investigative reporting. Dark Diagnosis Files investigates the horror that happens around hospitals and medicine. New cases every Sunday, Tuesday, and Friday. Real, documented, told with the gravity they deserve. One drop of blood was supposed to change the world. Instead, it showed exactly how much damage a single broken promise can do. One frightened patient at a time.